right, welcome back to the Roast It Yourself podcast brought to you by Coffee Bean Corral and Current Crop Roasting Shop. I'm Stephen Burnett from Coffee Bean Corral in Jackson, Mississippi, and with me as always is Catherine Mansell, certified Q grader and director of Current Crop Roasting Shop in New Orleans, Louisiana. How are you, Catherine?
I'm good. We are in town coming up with some new plans for 2025.
Exciting things in the books.
Yeah.
We like exciting things,
Yeah.
yes. And you've got to come to Jackson to have exciting ideas. This is the intellectual capital of these United States,
Right.
probably the entire Western Hemisphere. So you came to the right place.
Yeah.
But each week, we set aside about 10 minutes to field questions from home coffee roasters and professionals alike about roasting, tasting, and most importantly, enjoying coffee. You can send your questions to questions@riypod.com. That's questions@riypod.com to get a nice shout out from us in an upcoming episode, and of course, to get your question answered. This week's question comes from Eric in Baton Rouge. And he says, "Hi there. I'm really glad I found the podcast. I've been binge watching the Q&A episodes." So I've never been binge watched before. That's weird. I've been the binge watcher, not the binge watchee, and I don't know how to feel about that. It's pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. Thank you for your binge watch, Eric. We take it as a sign of honor. Following up on Ernest's question in episode 34, when starting out with blending, would you recommend starting with just 2 different origins or 3 or more? It seems to me that starting with 2 would be a way to go at first to keep things simple, then moving up to more complicated blends. Thoughts? Comments? Thanks, Eric at Baton Rouge. Eric, thanks so much for the question, man. We really appreciate it. Catherine, what do you think? Start with 1, 2, 3, 4? What's the secret recipe here?
I think most of the time, depending on what I'm looking for in the blend, I start off with 2. So say I'm looking for a blend that, for me, I want it to have everything. I want it to have nutty and chocolatey and fruity and some acidity there. But so I'll go with 2 coffees, both being completely different from each other, in hopes that I'll bring out the specific things in each one that I want. So if I want something nutty, maybe I'll start with CHC, the Reserve Espresso from Brazil, because it's got that nice pecan note in it. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I've got the nut, whatever nutty note that I want in there. And then if I want something that's really chocolatey, I'd go maybe something from Guatemala. And then I'd start with those 2 to see, what am I picking up and how much percentage-wise of both, which one is sort of outshining the other. And then from there, if I want to throw in something fruity, I'd grab something else. But, maybe like a Dorado Bombay if I want something really fruity to sort of go along with there. But I always start off with 2, only because when you start off, obviously, I start off 50-50. How much, let's just see which one outshines the other. And then when I have both of those worked out, changing up percentages to highlight, the pecan note, I'll start off with a smaller percentage of something fruity. But normally my base is 2. And then sort of changing up ratios as you go, which takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it does.
But it helps when I just go with 2.
I think that's smart. I think because it's like anything else, when you're trying to figure something out, the more variables you change, the less you understand what you've done. Right. So if you throw in, like, if you got a coffee you like, you throw 2 other ones in there with it, you don't know which of those other 2 necessarily actually made the thing you liked or didn't like. So you don't know what to adjust next time. What I hear you saying, and I think this is true, is that you have to know the constituent coffees first.
Yeah.
Right? Unless you're working off a recommendation, like someone said these 2 are good together, that's cool. But you got to know the coffees that you're working with here. And typically what I would if I wanted to start blending just to experiment, dip my toe in the water, I would start with my favorite coffee, because it's the one you probably know the best.
Yeah.
And then be critical and ask, what could this coffee have that it doesn't have? Right. So maybe you like really fruity Ethiopian coffees, right? But they, you roast them light and they're a little more tea-like, so they're lacking on the body.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's a good heavy body coffee? And I always go to Brazil for that. I don't literally go there. I just pick a Brazilian coffee. That's a lot of trouble. But I pick a Brazilian coffee for that because I know Brazilian coffees typically have a good solid body to them. So I might start 50% of this more tea-like fruity coffee that I like, and 50% of the Brazilian coffee. And then taste it. Taste it not just immediately after. Wait a few days, wait a few more days, taste it, and see what you get. Maybe you find that Brazilian is kind of washing out the fruitiness because it's a little more subtle. You like the body, but now you're missing out on some of that fruitiness. And so you say, well, I'll just do maybe, 60-40 on the next blend and do a little bit less Brazilian, a little bit more of the Ethiopian or the African coffee, and then try that. And so you need to know the constituents and you need to know what they're bringing to the table so you can make those adjustments.
Yeah.
I'm very much a keep it simple, stupid person. That's the best advice ever. So starting with 2 is a really good idea. But I can also see, many of the blends I make have 3 coffees in them because I like having kind of a classic, mid-range breakfast coffee or whatever, like a Colombian or something in there. And so I wind up with like my exciting coffee, and I wind up with my like coffee for body, like a Brazilian, and then I wind up with something in the middle that kind of like is just a nice classic coffee flavor. And that's my typical go-to. I don't know if that is the best way of doing it, but it's just what I typically do. But the point is, it's kind of like if you're going to paint a picture, if you don't know what colors you're working with, you can't really do that. You have to know this one brings this and this one brings that, and that way you can use them well, I think. What else do you have to say about blending?
You'll see, there's lots of blends here at CVC, and you'll see a lot of other businesses doing lots of blends. And, maybe you've got a coffee that was bland and you still want to use it. So you'll put 10% of that coffee in there. Yeah. So sometimes blends can be used to really highlight all of the different things that you're looking for. And you can also use blends to sort of still use a coffee that didn't have much to it. Yeah. So there are lots of really good reasons to use blends and good ways to not waste coffee. Yeah. So sometimes it's nice to throw, 5 or 10% of something in there that just brings a little bit more complexity to it, but not in an intense way.
Yeah.
But
it's a backup singer, right? You know, you don't want to just have the backup singer. Yeah. You want to have, but you will throw that into a blend and like, okay, that maybe help it out. Maybe it doesn't, but I'm still using the coffee. Yeah. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. There's a lot of really good reasons to do this. And I'll just say one more thing. We've talked about it before. Blending, if you want to get like really good at blending, you really need to roast the coffee separately, so that you can tell, again, what each piece is bringing to the table. Yeah. All of our blends, because of the way we're selling them pre-mixed. And so they work well. We've tested a lot. It takes a lot of trial and error. My goodness, we roast so much coffee to make a blend because we don't have the benefit of this got to get dumped in the roaster together.
Right.
We have to know how these coffees roast at different roast levels and what ratios work. And sometimes the ratios are pretty intricate. Yeah. And so like the recipe is like 7 or 8 coffees. You're like, my goodness, why? It's because this has got to taste good at the light side of medium all the way through a dark roast. Yeah. But we have the ability to just do a lot of testing and have, 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 batches come out meh. So we can have one batch come out good and then just save that and repeat. Yeah. And if you're buying coffee for home roasting, especially, you may not want to spend all the money to do that much trial and error.
Right.
When you could just buy your constituent coffees, roast them separately, cup them or taste them separately, and then try ratios at blending. We had a guy that emailed us and said that he literally keeps them separate and adjusts the ratio at the point of grinding. So he'll literally say, I think it's brilliant because you keep maybe a pound of each, and then for one brew, he'll do 33% of this, 33% of that, 33% of the other. Yeah. And then for his next brew, he can tweak it and go, okay, well, I'm going to do 20, 20, and 60, right? But he can do that without wasting a lot of coffee and going, this is kind of meh. He does it by just blending them right before, like in the cup before he grinds them, which is just a great and very efficient way of thinking about this. And so, start with 2 is a great idea. Know the coffees that you're working with. And I would just start with my favorite coffee, the one that you know the best, and just see what could be added to this to make it better.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric, thank you for the follow-up question off Ernest's question in episode 34. Really appreciate it. It's a great discussion. I have ideas now that I didn't have before. I was like, now I want to go try some more blends. So there we go. Catherine, have we closed the book on blending? Now, we've already answered one question. Clearly, it didn't answer everything. So now we've answered the second question on blending. Are we done yet? Is this closed, the book on blending?
Not yet.
Not
I don't
yet?
think so.
Gosh, all right. Well, I guess we'll need somebody to send us another question off of Eric's question, and we'll keep this conversation going. Or just, in the comments. In the comments, you can tell us what you think about blending, how you do it, how you got started in it, because that's specifically the question, and how to avoid going a little too crazy with it.
Right.
But otherwise, this has been the Roast Yourself podcast. We've enjoyed making this. I hope you've enjoyed it, watching it as well, binge watching it apparently. Yeah, we encourage the binge watchers.
Yeah.
We're excited to watch the Roast Yourself podcast grow and reach more and more people, introduce them to coffee roasting, make them feel like it's possible. So many people just wouldn't even know where to start.
Right.
And if you got somebody who loves coffee, this is the next progression in anyone's coffee journey, is like, you get the nice equipment, you get the kettle, you get the little scale, and then you're like, but now what? This is now what?
Yeah.
Like, beyond this, you have to move to another country and plant coffee. That's the only... This is it. Like,
right.
this is the outer space of coffee enjoying. So people that love coffee, send this to them, because we want them to know that it's very, very doable and they can get into coffee roasting. We could not do this without the folks that handle our audio, video, and graphics and make this look and sound good. I almost said smell good. They don't do that, but we do that. But they make us look and sound good, and we want to thank you guys for that so much. Remember, send any questions you have about coffee in general or coffee roasting in particular to questions@riypod.com. Otherwise, have a great day and happy roasting.
Happy roasting. Thank you.